biology. So can you talk a little bit about this factor that that there's an intention to want to do things in a more expedited way? No, that's a difficult aspirational goal, but it is something that it's a directive of this company. Can you talk a little bit further about maybe how we're going to move quicker?
Sure. Well, the autobahn was a big investment by the German government to create speed. And we think that the fuel for development using results-based experimentation in space biology can be funneled through securitization and de-risking the venture. What I mean is that to date, government and academic studies in microgravity are the primary funders, and their horizons are anywhere between 10 and 30 years. But when you start talking about venture capital, you look at a horizon of 2, maybe 5, sometimes 7-year horizons for return. And they're willing to provide massive funding for successful operations. And we're seeing a massive investment of late in gene therapy, stem cell research for commercial usage. And we think we can marry that funding, that fuel, to create the autobahn of microgravity for space biology.
Thank you, Frank. So I want to step over to Dr. Carruthers, joining us today, who has experience sending working with hundreds of clients, getting their payloads to space, and international clients, I think both commercial and academic. And Carl, what has been some of the challenges that you've seen from your decades working in this area, and where do you see where some of the opportunity lies?
So recently, I'll take it back to when my first payload I ever flew I was an undergrad as a student. It was on the space shuttle STS-91 in 1998, and I started seeing the pace at which research was done and the style that research was done was just slow compared to what I was even doing in an undergrad lab. As I advanced more into research in an industry type setting, I was flying some payloads again on the space shuttle, and I realized that there had been about a 10-year difference in between that time, and the pace had not changed. It was still a very slow, laborious, 3 to 5 years every flight type of process. So as I moved and transitioned into to the actual commercial space world, working with researchers, this time I moved from I like to say the other side of the paperwork. I moved over from the bench to the paperwork side, and I started interfacing with researchers and trying to make a difference in that ability, that time, that amount of time it takes to get a research on the space station. I noticed that the trend that was happening was some researchers were smart enough and well-funded enough to actually think ahead and start paralleling research projects. They'd have multiple, like you would on a lab bench normally on the ground, and thinking with the ability to go, I'm going to fly 3 to 4 flights in the next 2 to 3 years. And those researchers were making great discoveries. They were able to move their research forward and get answers and get results quickly in order to answer the problem that was driving them as a researcher or as a business oriented researcher. And it struck me that is critical in making a discovery, is the ease at which you can just reproduce things on the ground and reproduce experiments on the ground was disconnected from the way that it's done in space. And I feel that is a great opportunity for someone to come in and change that and make that opportunity available. And I believe that that's strongly what one of the challenges is. I think SpaceLabs is capable of making that change, of getting the right people in the room, such as the correct type of people who have a vision about space research, the people who have the funding and want to fund and want to support these researchers to get these results, and a commercial entity that actually wants some of these results and are looking for something that's patentable or something that they can sell. And I think we're right now in space at that confluence of all three of those coming together in a great way that it just never has been together before. I'm excited to see that these things are happening, and I'm excited to be for all researchers that are just now getting involved in research, because your research is going to get accelerated faster than it ever has before, and I think SpaceLabs is positioning themselves to enable that.
Thank you, Carl. I'm going to turn it back over and speak with Frank again. So Frank, what are where do we have some in recent history? Do we have any use cases regarding pharmaceutical industry and success stories in space that might be worth briefly sharing?
Sure. Well, I don't know if you've ever heard of the world's best-selling drug, Keytruda. You probably see a lot of their TV commercials. It's a cancer drug. And I'm super excited to look at the history that Merck developed, potentially a patent reformulation on 15 flights, 15 consecutive flights, to help protect their patent on the world's best-selling drug. From my understanding, there's been some reformulation of the protein through protein crystal studies, and looking at the molecular level of the efficacy of this biologic. And it is something that we want to replicate, a long-term, well-invested strategy for defensible IP that can be rewarded in the marketplace and really help millions of people in a more rapid timeline. We'd like to save lives today. And we think that if there are researchers around the globe that are studying space biology and believe that microgravity can unlock some secrets for either discovery or manufacturing or some other commercial application, we want to hear from you now and provide the funding and the access that has been restricted. We want to move the timeline down from 9 years from discovery to third stage clinical trials. We want to move that down to the standard of 2.5 years now. And we will develop, and it is our mission to be a major presence in the biomedical market using microgravity and new instrumentation and a new plot formation for solutions using one of the most amazing platforms that has been left on the table.
Thank you, Frank. So to reiterate, so researchers out there who have maybe some novel ideas or thoughts on how they can continue their research should reach out to Frank, and we'll make those details available, but it's Frank at MySpaceLabs.com. Additionally, your advisory board, it sounds like you're looking to enroll you want to get some experts on the science advisory board of the business. So if there's any experts who are looking to join our space advisory board, definitely contact Frank as well there. So I want to reiterate that you've had SpaceLabs is looking at doing new ways to help invest in space biology to make space biologics and therapeutics derived from microgravity research more available and advance the commercialization of those efforts. I want to thank Dr. Carruthers and Frank Pournelle, both from SpaceLabs, and they can be reached respectively at carl@myspacalabs.com and frank@myspacalabs.com, where they can be reached directly. And any parting thoughts from either of you before we sign off?
Well, Robert, I did read your book. I think that space is open for business now. I think we're seeing lots of international competition for new platforms, new deployments, new usage. And, I want to encourage researchers specifically to get into space biology, because pound for pound, kilo for kilo, there is no known value greater than saving life. and extending us maybe to 150-year average lifespan.
That would be pretty awesome.
There's a reason to be in business, and business is a booming.
Great. Well, thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Robert.
Appreciate it.